Hey everyone, thank you for joining us for another episode of the Boston Greeks podcast. I'm your host, Ari, and with me as always is Foti Stamos. Hi Foti, how are you today?
Good, and yourself, Ari?
I'm doing great. I'm actually excited. We have a great guest, and sometimes we have some singers, artists, but for me, my personal passion is to get to know people in a professional environment, and our guest today hits that right on the head. Foti, tell us a little more about him.
Absolutely. As you mentioned, all of our guests who come to the show are exciting for us because they have a great story to tell. But this individual, for us, and me specifically, is an honor to have him here because I grew up watching this individual along with my family through the years in news. But we'll talk more about in detail about our guest, but I want to bring onto our show, to the Boston Greeks podcast, the award-winning news anchor and media professional and entrepreneur, Mr. Mike Nikitas. Mike, thank you so much for joining us during your busy time. It's an honor to have you here with us.
You are so welcome, Foti and Ari, and I knew I'd get to a certain point in life where people would say, when I was a kid, I used to watch you on TV.
Yes.
That has to be great, and on another level, like, oh man.
I gotta say,
no,
Mike,
it's wonderful.
Before we get into the conversation, in our household as Greeks watching TV at that time in the 80s and 90s, whenever we could point out a Greek in media, on a set, in the movies and so forth, we definitely made it a point to follow that individual. And the fact that you were Greek was one of the main reasons why we watched your broadcast. But then for us, it was about you delivering the news. So we watched you religiously back then.
That is just so wonderful to hear. I hear stories like that all the time. And it's just such an honor and privilege for me at this point in my life to know that people still remembered and people still watch back then.
Absolutely.
Can we get a little bit of his history? Can we get a little bit of your background?
I grew up in New Hampshire, and I live in New Hampshire now. Worked in Massachusetts for a very long time, almost 30 years. Moved around the country a bit with my career as sort of a news gypsy, so to speak. I went to school for a while in California at Cal State, and I got my first job in radio back then, and worked in the San Francisco Bay Area for several years. I tried to get a job in TV, and nobody wanted to hire me in California without any TV experience. So I went to a much smaller market in Western Colorado, Grand Junction, Aspen, which was beautiful, and just the prettiest place I've ever lived. That was wonderful. I had one child there. Got a job after that in a sort of medium market, South Bend, Indiana. So I lived in Indiana for 6 years.
Wow.
And that was a wonderful experience. I had 2 daughters there, and I'm just going to do this real quick. 2 daughters there, and then got an agent and got the job at NECN, and I was there from 1992 to 2017. I did the first newscast there. And my wife somehow stayed with me through all of these moves. And I have 4 children. We have 4 beautiful, wonderful children, all grown now. 3 out of 4 married, 4 gainfully employed. So 2 thumbs up. I think I did my job for the most part.
You did. That's great. So South Bend, Indiana, I can't even, because I'm a city boy. I've always been in the city. I've always been surrounded by lots of Greeks and Greek things. How is that experience? I know that it's I'm sure for somebody on a professional level, it's just something to soak in and new experiences and learning. But how was it as a Greek American?
It was wonderful. I loved the Midwest. There was a fairly large community of Greek Orthodox. There was a large church there in South Bend. The longtime congressman from that area, John Bradamus, was a Greek guy. So it's not too far from Chicago, which, as you know, has a fairly large Greek American population. And I loved the Midwest. At first, I didn't think I would like it that much, but when I lived there for a while, I realized that it's less transient than many other areas of the country. And people that were there had lived there all their lives, and they expected you would too. So, they were very accepting, and it was wonderful. Different than Colorado, different than California, different than New England.
Excellent. You mentioned that you did the first newscast for NECN, and that was back in '92
Yes.
when it first launched. Can you tell us about your experiences at NECN? I mean, for us in the Boston market, we're heavy into, WCVB, and there was Channel 4, Channel 7, and so forth. But then there came along NECN, and we remember back then gravitating to more and more often to watching NECN over the other networks.
Well, it was a wonderful experiment at the time. They were looking to create, when I was hired, they said, we want to do NPR on TV. And it was thoughtful journalism. There was a lot of long form journalism. And that kind of thing you don't see very much anymore. We, in the early days, we took all sorts of events live continuously because we had a lot of time to fill. I anchored the whole O.J. Simpson trial. It lasted 10 months.
Wow.
I anchored we took the whole 6 weeks of the preliminary hearing live every day, and I anchored that as well, along with some other people. It was a wonderful experience. I did a lot of documentaries when I was there, a handful, many people did them. At a certain point, I think we were doing, I think we did 60 documentaries over the course of 2 or 3 years. It was amazing. And you don't see much of that anymore, except in the public realm. There were a great group of people there. I still am in touch with so many of them, love them all. And NECN continues to exist in a different form nowadays.
Yes.
But it was, there are so many memories that I have covering news there, from 9/11 to the Boston Marathon bombings, a lot of big breaking news stories, and going out to the first Patriots Super Bowl celebration and a couple others after that too. So it was a great experience. And I'm just honored when people say that they watched and they remember, and they found something there that was substantive and meaningful as well as interesting.
Can I ask an opinion, your opinion? I have like a love-hate relationship with media nowadays.
Most people do, Ari.
For obvious reasons. From your point of view, in your opinion, you said things were a lot different back then on NECN. Have you seen things going better, worse? Is it just different? What's it from your point of view?
Well, in terms of the complete media landscape, I would say it is different, and in many ways it is worse. I think that we can all sort of see the changes that have occurred over the past, particularly 10 years, with the polarization of media in this country, whether it's on cable news or in newspapers or online. I mean, there's just so much information, and politically we've become more polarized, and so has media. It was interesting, back in the 90s, I had an opportunity. I was offered a job at Fox News, which I didn't take, and I met with Roger Ailes for quite some time.
Wow.
And one of the things that he did, I think, that was brilliant, but at the same time very corrosive to our culture, is he figured out that rather than give people what we think they need, we're going to give them what they want. And so he, fulfilled that whole confirmation bias thing. We're going to give people news and information that confirms their bias, and then we will see our ratings go up. And they did. And you know what? Most everybody has followed that model to some degree, whether consciously, subconsciously, or a little bit of both. And it's been successful. And it turned into eyeballs. And that's what TV and media is all about. It's the number of eyeballs, the number of readers you get. Anybody who tells you anything different doesn't know what they're talking about.
It's successful financially, but I would say not successful in many other aspects.
No, socially, maybe not. It's interesting, over the past summer, if you followed ratings, the ratings for the 3 major network newscasts, the half-hour newscasts every night, were up to their highest levels since the 90s. World News Tonight, I think, went 8 weeks where it was the #1 half hour of television at all day parts.
Wow.
And that's really stunning. And I think that generally, people, who knows what the real reason, my theory would be that they generally play it down the middle, the network newscasts. Some people might say they're still a little left leaning, but they generally play it down the middle, and they give people a half hour of news And that's enough for most people.
Yeah.
Because people, I think, were becoming bombarded, and especially with COVID and with the Trump presidency, watching so much news and getting so addicted to it. Many people, not everybody,
Sure.
that the half-hour newscast provided a niche and some relief and some honesty about what was going on in the world.
I felt personally that like people would want to know the realities of things, but then I'm an internet professional for 20 plus years. And like I said, we started a social network before social networks were a thing. I am the biggest critic of social media now. I don't know how most lay people view it, but me as somebody who was in it, I think it's absolutely terrible because of those points that you pointed out, where you're not looking for the truth, you're looking for what coincides with what you want to see, what you want to hear, what you believe. And facts can be brought right to your face and you'll be like, eh. And then something you want to hear can be brought to your face and your mind will make it a fact. And that's what it seems like is going on. And it's a real interesting time in our society right now. And I'm pretty interested to see what the next, 2022 and then 2024 are going to bring as far as that. Do you have any similar thoughts?
Ari, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that people, that whole thing, I mean, if you study psychology, confirmation bias is one of the biases that we know exists, and it's human nature, and it's sad. And then I think when falsehoods get repeated repeatedly, then the falsehoods become truth. And I'm not trying to be political here, but I think that there is a lot of information that is not truth. And facts are stubborn things. But as you say, somebody can be hit upside the head with the facts. And if it doesn't align with what they believe, they see it as whether it's fake news or just not true. They will not believe it. And we've seen it time and time again.
And it's not new. It's not new. This has been going on in history. It's like it boggles my mind how there's so many people that just think this is like a new thing, and they're at the cusp of being so smart to like follow how fake this news is, or how like there's us versus them. It's like this is just a rehash of history, and it's kind of scary.
It is, and the more things change, the more they stay the same. And you're absolutely right. I think obviously the big difference is social media and the internet. They have supercharged it. They have put a flamethrower on this particular human characteristic and made it a million times worse.
Yeah. My gosh.
Well, you're mentioning, gentlemen, some interesting times that we're living in for sure. And who knows what the future holds for us, but we'll keep our heads up.
Well, you know what? Let me ask Mike as well. Impossible for you to know, but from you have a long history and you're a professional. So I value absolutely 100% your opinions, even, if we're talking about the future and you really don't know, but do you think that we're just going to be consistently going the path that we're going? Do you think anything could possibly snap us out of it? Do you think any new technology or any new medium could possibly turn this around? Because I'll tell you, from my opinion, I don't see anything in the immediate future changing the way we're going, because it's technology is moving really fast, and it's really tough for people to kind of grasp it. I mean, technology is moving faster now than it ever has in history, and most people just have no clue. They just turn on their computer and it works. Like, they don't understand anything behind it. So in my opinion, I think somewhere in the future things may change, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. And hopefully anything that happens soon is not going to be damaging to anything positive that will happen later on. Does that make any sense to you? Does that, am I
Sure, sure. No, absolutely. I think that, it's distressing, and it's disheartening to think in those terms, but it's hard to see it any other way. The next 2 years, until we get to 2024, do I see things improving in this country in terms of our polarization, the anger, the distress? No, I don't. And I hope to goodness things improve. I don't think that there's anything that technology can do or government can do. They can, around the margins, make changes in terms of rules as far as the FCC rules regarding content and regulation of content. Sure, there are things that can be done there. But do I see this country changing in any way? I don't. I hate to be, a doomsayer, but I don't think things are going to get any better over the next, 2 years. I hope they do. I really do. But when I see people really distrusting and hating this current president for no reason other than he's not the president they wished they had,
Yeah.
not for any substantive reason, I think that we're in a tough road the next couple of years.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. It's historical. I think we're witnessing history like develop in front of our eyes, and we've witnessed some major things in the recent past, and I think we're gonna witness some major things in the future. And you know what? I wish there were more news people that had, I don't know you very well, but from what I've read about you, from what I've heard about you, I wish there were more news people as yourself who take integrity and take truth and take a realistic stance on what's going on, like it or hate it. We need more people like that. We need more people such as yourself.
Well, thank you, Ari. And I do like to think that there are many, many, many people in media who do share the same view, who do care, who do report, who are not slanted, who are not overtly biased, who really do care about the future. And I'm one who believes in more information rather than less.
Yes.
And I think that there is some hope in media. Maybe perhaps it's just because of my bias being a member of the media, but the vast majority of the people I know in media are honest people who want to get it right and who do care about people and the future and truth.
That's so nice to hear. Thank you for saying that, because I get worried. I don't have a lot of exposure to actual media people. I just have my computer, my TV, so I'm just like everybody else. But I'm glad to hear that, because sometimes I think that everybody's going for the quick buck, and whatever sells, and that doesn't work that way. And
yeah, well, that's what underscores everything. Never forget it.
Gentlemen, we're talking about tough roads ahead, and difficult times. But I also want to touch on, Mike, a little bit about your family history, because it's quite impressive.
Yes.
Where you grew up in New Hampshire. Are you second or third generation?
My grandparents, 3 of my 4 grandparents were immigrants from Greece, early 1900s, and that big wave around, 1910, 1915, right around then.
Excellent. And so on both sides of your family, your dad's and your mom's, you document some very interesting historical moments in time. And I'd love to at least touch upon that for our audience, to hear a little bit about, number one, on your dad's side and on your mom's side, about some of the historical facts that happened. I'd let you kind of lead this.
Well, these are things that have nothing in a way to do with me, obviously, but as a family, we've been very proud of, all the contributions I think that some of my ancestors made, or moments where they were, at moments of history. On my dad's side, my dad was born in Fitchburg, and he was one of 5 kids, and 6 kids. And he and 2 of his brothers went off to war. My dad flew B-29s against Japan in the Pacific, and he was shot down right at the end of the war. I don't know how well you know your sort of history at the end of the war, but Hiroshima was August 6th, Nagasaki was August 9th. My dad was shot down on the 8th and floated around in the ocean for 6 days, along with his crewmates. The only person who died in the plane being shot down was the pilot, who kept the plane flying till the last second. Wow. And they were taken prisoners of war on the very last day of the war. Miraculously, it's kind of a long story, but miraculously, they did survive. They were not executed like so many other American POWs right at the end of the war. And they were taken almost immediately to Hiroshima and were they were the first Americans there in Hiroshima on the last day of the war. It was about a week after the bomb had been dropped, and came in contact with, when they were thrown in a jail there, two guys that were in Hiroshima. There were 10 Americans known in Hiroshima when the bomb was dropped. Two of them were still alive. There were probably the only two still left alive. They both died within hours, but one of them was from Lowell, actually. Yeah, and my dad, survived the war and had 4 kids, and he died pretty young. Most of the guys died pretty young from, we think, exposure even after a week, Hiroshima, to radiation. We don't know for sure, but so many of them did die that we sort of surmised that. Yeah, he died at 45. So yeah, but a wonderful guy. And, we were always, my dad was born on the 4th of July. We were always taught, even though we were Greek, we were Americans. Even my grandfather, we were Americans. Nice. And my dad flew the flag, every holiday, and, he was that generation. So yeah, that's a little bit of my dad's.
Wow, that's impressive. And you did write a nice piece in the Boston Globe about this event that happened.
Yeah, I did some time ago on the 50th anniversary of Hiroshima. I wrote a piece in the Sunday Globe, and then I did a longer piece, a TV piece on the 60th anniversary on NECN. So yes, it's quite a story, and there's so many twists and turns to it. But those are the cliff notes.
Yeah. And then on your mom's side, Mike, there was one thing that I read that was also pretty impressive. If you want to kind of let us know about that as well.
Well, again, these are things that happen, when this particular event happened when I was a kid, but I heard the stories. My mom's brother, my Uncle George Bacopoulos, was a priest and later served as the archdiocese, the chancellor of the Archdiocese of North and South America with Archbishop Iakovos. And when the Selma to Montgomery marches were happening in 1965 with Martin Luther King and so many other Black leaders for voting rights, which is still going on today. I know the story I heard. I can remember sitting around the kitchen table in Holyoke at my grandmother's house, hearing these stories with my mom and my dad and my Uncle George. And essentially, the Archbishop was watching TV in New York at the Archdiocese, at his apartment, actually, and was watching on TV what was going on, because there were a series of marches. And he said, we have to go down there. And I think that everybody was telling him no. And he said to my Uncle George, you're going to charter a plane and we're going to go down there. And so he chartered a plane. They landed in a cow pasture outside Selma. And I always remember my Uncle George say, when we got out of the plane, you could cut the tension with a knife. I'd never heard that phrase before. And they actually went and there was one march. If you've ever seen the movie Selma, there is an Archbishop Iakovos character. And they marched with Martin Luther King. There was only major white religious figure to do that. And, there's the famous picture on the front page of Life magazine with Iakovos and Martin Luther King and some other people with him. So, we always, I always remember that story and the event because of that.
That's incredible. It's funny to something that I've known about, my whole life. I've read about, and I've always felt a kind of pride that the Greeks were one of those few that stood with what they believed was right. And I've always felt that kind of pride. And to hear you, who actually have like a direct connection, is like incredible.
It's so interesting, because if you take the time, and I would encourage anybody who doesn't know that much about it, and all they maybe know is that Life magazine cover, which I've seen in Greek restaurants before on the wall, is to read what happened and read about it and read the words that Archbishop Iakovos said that day. And I'll tell you, they'll bring a tear to your eye. They're as powerful as anything, if I may say, Martin Luther King said that day. It's stunning, it's powerful, and it's real, and it's something to be proud of. But at the same time, remember, Iakovos said this: I was called traitor for going down there. A lot of people didn't like the fact that I was going down there. And there's a Greek word for traitor, and I forget what it was, but he was called that. And so it wasn't an easy thing for him to do. And he was a really a wonderful guy. I remember him at my uncle's funeral. He had these, he had these intense eyes, and he just was a very just loving, caring, good person in my limited exposure to him. So yeah, he's somebody to be remembered. And of course, I believe the seminary in Boston is named after him, isn't it? At the Hellenic College, isn't there a Archbishop?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
That's incredible to hear. And nothing great that you're going to do in your lifetime is ever going to be easy. And he will stand the test of time, and history looks back. And I believe, my opinion, that he did the right thing, and more power to him. And it was an incredible story. And it's so great that you, like I said before, you had that direct connection. It's amazing.
Yeah, it was a very long time ago. I was just a kid, when I heard the story, I was like 10.
Yeah, but you said these stories about your World War II and settlement and all these things, they don't involve you, but this is your family, this is your line. You are part of it, because that stuff molded who you are, and I think it's an amazing thing. And I loved hearing these stories. I thought that we before we ended, we got to have him back. That's all.
Yes, absolutely. And Mike, you've been a very impactful person for us and our communities. You've done a lot of great stuff. Just your resume, your bio is endless. Like, how do you find the time to actually do everything that you've just listed? I'm sure you have a lot of sleepless nights, lots of coffee, I'm assuming, as well.
I've had 2 cups today.
But I also noticed that you did a little bit of film. You've been in a couple of movies.
Yeah, those were just small things. I was typecast as a newscaster. They were very, small roles, but they were a lot of fun. The movie Ted, I played a newscaster in Ted. I mean, if you blink twice, you miss it. I was on for like 4 seconds.
We're gonna go back.
Still pretty cool though.
And then I was in 2 other movies. One was back in the 90s called, they changed the name of it. Original Sin was the final name, with Mark Harmon. That movie went nowhere. Ted was a big box office hit. And I still get residual checks from both of them. I get, like, every once in a while I'll get one from Original Sin, and it'll say like 39 cents re-release in Luxembourg, something like that,
That's actually really cool. You're like Seinfeld in that episode where he cramped up trying to sign his checks there. That's so funny.
Mike, so tell us what's going on now in your world. What are you up to these days?
I've tried to, have a new chapter in my life after leaving full-time news, which I did for a very long time. I appeared just until very recently on WGBH, Beat the Press, which just got canceled after, I think, 22 years, something like that. Wow. Which 22 years is a long run. As I told people on the show, I said, look, Seinfeld only lasted 9 years. When they go 22 years in TV, I don't care what kind of show it is. That's a good thing.
Right. Yeah.
But I teach at the University of New Hampshire, just on an adjunct basis in the Carsey School of Public Policy, the grad school. And then I also teach, I'm a visiting professor at Brandeis. I'll be there next week in the Heller School of Management MBA for Physicians program. I think they're the only ones that have an MBA for doctor program. It's a wonderful program.
Wow.
The big thing is, though, I have my media training and Nikitas Communications. I do media training. I do a lot of still on-camera work. I do a lot of presentation training, public speaking training, those sorts of things. NikitasCommunications.com if you want to check it out.
Absolutely.
I work with a lot of major corporations, individuals as well, and I get people ready for media interaction, or even people who have done it before. Buff them up a little bit and work with them. And so I do those things, and then I got a couple of motorcycles that I ride around a lot. I travel and tour my BMWs and have a good time. Try to go skiing and do stuff and travel a little bit, and maybe slowing down 10%. But try to keep things light.
Another quick question: have you been, or any plans to visit Greece?
I have been, but as a kid. I was there. I went to like a lot of, I don't know if you've heard, I don't know if is the Ionian Village still around?
Yes.
Yeah.
It is,
Still
yeah.
around.
So when I was a kid, I went to the Ionian Village.
Oh,
But that
cool.
was the only time I ever went to Greece. I did go, I think it was a month at the time. I went for,
Yeah.
a good long time in the summer. But I haven't been since. And I have no immediate plans with COVID, but I
Yeah,
almost went right before COVID and had something come up. And I was going to go with a buddy of mine, but didn't go. And so, yeah, I'd love to, and I will. It's
sure.
just a question of when and how at this point. Like with travel is just so crazy right now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
understandable,
How
understandable.
about you guys? Have you had a chance to, I mean, have you been to Greece recently?
Not
Not
recently.
recently.
Ever since COVID, like you said, we've been hunkered down and no immediate plans. But prior to that, growing up, yes, family vacations, going out with the buddies and hanging out. But yeah,
It's so tough right now with travel. It's just so difficult. I have and tell me when we're running out of time here. I have a daughter. One of my four kids lives in Australia, married to an
Oh,
Australian guy. And it's just been, I don't know if you've followed what's been going on there, but they've been the most restrictive of perhaps any
mhm.
country in allowing people in. They're this island out there and they've always been this way. And now they just closed the borders. And
yeah,
it's only been in the last month or two that they've been allowing people in and only family members. So my daughter's going to have another child, another grandchild, and my wife's
congratulations.
going there. But it was very difficult for her to get in, and a special visa, and
Yeah.
there's the normal testing that you have to do and all that kind of thing, and being vaccinated and all that. But
Yeah,
the visa just made it even more
Yeah. And
difficult.
now, we're kind of going back up, and it's just going to be a mess for a while. But
after the news coverage that we've been watching these last couple of days with the airports and so forth, I don't envy anyone that's out there right now trying to
oh,
travel.
No, it's difficult.
Yeah,
Fortunately, planes do a fairly good job, and airlines do a fairly good job of, purifying the air,
mhm.
purifying seats, and there's a lot of technology available to do that, but it's so hard, and people are so upset, and we see all these air rage incidents.
yeah,
Yeah. It's this is where again, I'm sitting comfortably in my house. I'm not going anywhere, and I know air travel is perfectly fine, but when all I see are these clips of nut jobs like going crazy
chaos.
on planes, I'm like, oh my God, what is going on? But
Yeah,
it all goes back to like where it's like it's not reality. It's like you could take a flight and you'll be perfectly fine, but a perfectly fine flight doesn't make the news. These nut jobs going crazy does, and it's like just don't be scared out there.
excellent. Well, as Ari had mentioned, Mike, this has been wonderful. We definitely would love to have you come back at some point again. I'm sure we can talk more and more about yourself, about the world, about the future and what it has to hold. But maybe before we let you go, for our younger audience that's watching this segment, any advice or tips to them as an accomplished individual in media?
Boy, that's a tough one. Be true to yourself, obviously, and be truthful. But I guess, the one thing that I would say is when the stuff hits the fan, do your best work. Be
Right.
good in a crisis. And right now we're in a crisis. And be good to yourself, be good to the people around you, and just don't give up and do your best now when things are hardest.
Excellent, excellent.
Words,
That was
words,
great,
very
Ari.
wise words.
Any last minute thoughts or comments from Mike? Anything that you want to definitely we'll add Mike's
Yeah,
information.
let's have him give us his website again, and we're going to list it in the notes of the video and the podcast as well. And your website and and again what it entails.
Well, the website is devoted to my business, and it's Nikitas, Nikitas, communications.com. And so you can find out about all the kinds of things which I described earlier that I do. And, you can send me an email right there and we can talk.
I
Because
think Foti and I need a little bit of help from
Yes,
you
yes, absolutely.
you're doing pretty
after
well. I need
watching
some help.
and
My lighting's off today. Lighting's everything, and mine's off. It got sunny all of a sudden.
I was gonna say as well, like I have like this weird orange shade and I have the fake background, so it's like I can use that. But after watching many of our podcasts, many of our videos, I'm like, we should take like a workshop at some point to try to like,
Yeah,
kind of clean it up
polish.
a little. So, Mike, you're the
Happy to
guy.
do it, and you guys are free.
It's
This was amazing. This was like I said, we've had so many people from so many walks of life, and for me, my passion is kind of that history and what's going on now, and people who I respect and I believe are the good people, the integrity. They have the integrity. They have the truth. Those are the people that I watch out for. That's why today was such a pleasure for me personally. Thank you so much for
Same here.
taking the time with us, Mike.
You are so welcome. Thank you for those kind words, and right back at you, both of you, Ari and Foti. Thanks for doing
Thank
this podcast on a regular basis, because these are the sorts of things that connect us, all of us, and are so important, especially in a time like now where we don't have as many personal connections. I mean, certainly we're trying to go back around and out in our lives, but these kinds of connections are uber important. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you so
you
much.
as well.
Thank you.
Well,
And Fote, any last words?
yeah, Mike, I have a happy new year. We're about to end 2021 and entering
Congratulations on your
2022.
grandchild.
Congratulations as well.
Thank you very much. And happy new year to both of you. And I hope you both get the coin and the bread.
Thank you. And we're going to be in touch.
All right. Once again, Mike Nikitas, thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you, Foti. Thank you, everybody out there, for watching and listening. We will have Mike's contact info in the notes. We'll see you all next time. Happy New Year. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.